Yeah, and I'll perhaps like to pass to you as the sponsor, basically, for the blended stories, just to give us a bit of background to Emissio, if you don't mind.
All right, I certainly can do that. But I live in a modern world, so I need visualization with that, I'm afraid. What that means is that I will be sharing my screen just to give you a quick idea of who we are and what we do. Please tell me you can see the
Yes, we
screen.
can indeed.
Can you see the screen of the slide, or are you looking at something else?
I've got a full screen. You're talking about make more training impact.
Ah, we're looking at the same thing. Excellent. Um, all right. Yes, make more training impact. That's really what we as Emissio are all about. By the way, Emissio is Latin for blended or mixed. So I think you know where we're going. And if we look at the next part, what we do, we enable training providers to either offer blended solutions to their customers, be more personalized, online social learning. We do a lot of immersive. You talk about AR and VR, and everywhere. Quite often, training is also performance support. So on the job or remote, and that means quite often that people need a mobile app to deliver that training. And of course, we're very data driven because we like an evidence-based approach. And we'll come to that evidence-based approach a bit further. What we do, how we do that, is we work or we deliver training platforms, learning platforms. The brand that we specifically represent is A New Spring, which is a Dutch company. We represent them in the UK and further abroad. With regards to A New Spring, it's a blended learning platform, and we chose that specifically because it is specifically for training providers. We also deliver content, whether that's bespokely made or existing libraries, and all the services to make it work, I'd like to say. Because let's be honest, it's for us training providers, it's not about the technology or anything else. It's about growing the business, scaling the business, maybe lowering costs, all these elements. It's not about what the technology in itself is. That's just a tool. As I said, we do like an evidence-based approach. So we sponsor research, we do research, we collect stories, and that is exactly what we do here today, actually. Collecting stories of impact that was made, how other people do it, and then we share that with the community. You are part of the community. So welcome. We do more and different things with community. We have this Blended Stories webinar every month, but we also do other things such as events, future-proof your training business. That is a half-day event that we do once a year. Actually, in 2024, we'll, for the first time, do that in Ireland. So we're going abroad for that. And we also have our conference, which is the Business of Training Conference. You see here on the right-hand side. We did that for the first time in October this year. And we will be expanding and doing that again next year. So that's quite shortly on where we are. We talk about impact. We like impact. What does that mean? Well, our customers altogether bought well over 1 million licenses since we started. And we try to look at, well, what are our customers doing with that? The ones that we could relate to in the sense of what are they selling that particular product for that is based on the things that they do with us, we could relate that added up to more than 14 million pounds of revenue we're adding for other training companies. And award-winning training impact. Actually, last week, we won together with our customer Frontline Communication, silver for blended learning. So that's was certainly a highlight for us. But also other customers have won awards in different settings. So it wasn't the first time, fortunately, but that's where we are now. If you want to learn more about that, by the way, there's a case study available, and I think Paul will talk about that later. What does our ecosystem look like? We work with partners like a New Spring. We also work with, for example, University of Oxford, you see there. Kirsten comes from there, who's on this call, and will join our team. You also see TPT there, and no surprise, there will be a bit more hearing from TPT as well. But there are also other partners and customers that we work with. That's where I'll leave it. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Jan, for that short insight. So today, I'm really, should we say, quite excited, actually. I have the utmost respect for my next guest. Tom has been part of my journey all the time that we've been here supporting training providers. So Tom, obviously, you're the managing director of TPT Consultancy and Training. And perhaps it'd be good if you could perhaps give a slight introduction to yourself, and perhaps what was the innovation behind TPT in the early days in some respects. So Tom, perhaps pass the mic to yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. We started, and Paul mentioned earlier, from humble beginnings. I say humble beginnings. In 1993, and I was a consultant. I was working as a plant manager in a number of organizations, but I didn't like the constraints that were put on people when you're working in an organization like that. So I decided to go out on my own. And I decided to go into consultancy. But what happened as we were going along, consultancy turned into training. All the organizations were actually asking me, can we train in this? Can we train in that? And I went through a process of developing bespoke training for companies. But that was a lot of effort without any sort of real reward in the sense of reward. So we started to go down the route of getting accredited training. So we started looking at CQI and IRCA, and we deliver the full suite of CQI and IRCA auditing and quality courses. And we deliver them at practitioner, foundation, and professional level. So we've got the full suite. So everything was going quite well. We're also an aerospace provider, training partner, and we approved by the IAQG, and that's the International Aerospace Quality Group. And we are one of only 2 providers in the UK, and I think it's 4 or 5 providers in Europe who can provide the accredited training. So anyway, everything was going smoothly, and we were doing really, really well. Then the pandemic came along. And just before the pandemic hit, I had an interesting conversation with Jan. And he sent an email out to the blue, and we had a chat regarding a new spring. And we'd been tinkering with e-learning, but the software we were using at the time was a little bit difficult to manipulate. So after a little discussion, I decided I'll try out a new spring. So what we ended up doing before the pandemic started, actually, was delivering some of our foundation courses as e-learning courses, and we found them to be quite popular. But then the pandemic came along, and we had to look at training in a different way. We couldn't contact people, so we had courses which were classroom courses, but no classroom. So we decided to go down the route then of virtual training. So with the virtual training, it's not just as simple as, I think Dee was talking earlier, you use Zoom and maybe, what was it, Microsoft, Teams, but we didn't feel they were training platforms. So we started to use Adobe Connect. And it's a very, very good platform. So we did some good work with Adobe Connect. But what we found with some of the organizations we were working with, they would have software which would block Adobe Connect, and it became God's own job to actually get the technical people within the organizations to actually release your software so you could use it. So that would take us most of our time. So we started using Zoom and Teams as well then. So we use a mixture of everything. But since the pandemic, we've noticed that training delivery methods have evolved and learners want to study in a variety of ways. And one of the things that we found, we were a bit tentative in the beginning about thinking about going down the blended learning. Yeah. But we use e-learning, which is really, really, really good. We can deliver virtually or in the classroom, so there's no real issue there. So what we've decided to do was we decided to adapt our training methods of delivery to accommodate the latest, I won't call it a fad because I don't think it's a fad. I think it's there to stay. And we, as I said earlier, we deliver CQI and IRCA courses. And a lot of these courses are over 5 days, the lead auditor courses. What's the big issue today is people don't get the time to take 5 continuous days out to go into a classroom, even if it's a virtual course. They don't want to do that. So what we've done, we've taken one of our courses, it's our ISO 9001 lead auditor courses, which is a 5-day course. And what we've done, we've applied it to blended learning. So we do the first 3 days of the course online. And then we do the next 2 days in a classroom. What that does for us, it allows more flexibility for the learners because they're not tied up for a continuous amount of time. And the elements are broken down. So it's really good. And I'm not trying to promote a new spring here because we find it perfect. The e-learning element, which covers the first 3 days of the course, there are 10 sessions. Now, one of the things that you have to do, you need to continuously assess learners as they're going through the process. Oh, how can you do this when they're working on their own? Well, what we've done now, with the help of a new spring, we have hand-in assignments. Those hand-in assignments have to be uploaded before they go on to the next stage. And we have to mark them as a tutor, and we have to assess them so that give them feedback if they're not quite there. Now, one of the things we've picked up with this is that the learners are on their own. They haven't got a classroom to sort of interact with others. And I thought, oh, there could be a problem here. But what we found in hindsight is if they're in a classroom and there are some elements of the course that they're not really getting fully, the learning objectives are not embedded as they should be, they meld into the background and let the ones who are actually getting involved in the course more lead it. And then the tutor can't go back to them with enough time because of the constraints on the course. So what the real benefits for us are is that on this particular course, there are 10 sessions. Each one of these sessions must be uploaded. Each one of these sessions must be marked and we must give feedback. What we find is, because they're doing it on their own, they do a far better job than if they were in a classroom. I found this astonishing because I thought, oh, we're going to have a major problem with these guys now. They're not going to have a tutor to sit on their shoulder. But what they do it properly rather than go with the flow. Because in a classroom course, there's a pace you have to set to complete the activities and the tasks on time. They do it in their own time when they're doing the learning side of it. And what we follow up with then is the face-to-face, but or virtual, whatever it is, for the last 2 days. But we know exactly anybody who needs a little bit of additional help, but normally they don't because their effort is fantastic. I didn't expect it at all. So the benefits for me, the course is quite intense as a 5-day course. And we find that learners can have issues with completing the classroom environment and can sometimes go with the dominant learners. That's my
Jan's back now, but anyway, but what I was just thinking about in the transformation of the business from, should we say, humble beginnings, then going more into the digital transformation as a business as well. What sort of challenges did you find? Because I believe that, if I remember correctly, because you're a global business, that you also had challenges, obviously, with international, and there would have been cost implications as well. I didn't know, what challenges did you face there, and how did you solve those?
Well, the challenges we faced was that we're a small organization, but we have a worldwide reach. We operate in a lot of companies from a virtual and e-learning point of view. The challenges we found were that we needed to adapt to the new technologies that were out there. And because we're a small organization, we found that quite a simple process. We weren't afraid. We decided we're going to take on a new spring. We wrestled with it for a month or two, but we cracked it. Yeah. And it's the same with the virtual training. Yeah. There were a number of training providers at the time were going with Zoom. But Zoom didn't have all the functionality we wanted. So we looked at that, but we had decided to go with Adobe Connect. It's a clunky old thing, but Adobe Connect is a training platform. Now, what's happened now is Zoom has actually improved. And some of the organizations we work with, they wouldn't allow Zoom anywhere near them because of security reasons. You know, so the challenges we've had is that we have to be flexible and use different methods of delivery. And from the point of view of the e-learning, we now have, right, we started off with probably 2 courses to start with. We've now got, Sarah will correct me if I'm wrong, we've now got 17 CQI courses which we're offering as e-learning courses. Yeah. And what we're intending to do now is to convert all our 5-day courses to blended learning, because we wouldn't do it for a 3-day course, because we can do that fully online. Yeah. And I think the thing that we can do, which perhaps is we were talking about using a fax earlier, and you don't need to send a fax now. They don't need to do an activity and send us a fax or an email. The system does it for us. It tells us, and once you get to know it, the challenge is understanding what the systems can do to support the business. And we're generally quite lazy as a business when we've got all this stuff. We say, oh, we've just sold an e-course. That's good, you know, because it means that we've got a minimal tutor input, and we give them feedback automatically. They can do quizzes online. They can do everything that they want to. So the thing that for the blended learning, the challenge first was to say, can we do it? And it was bringing together all of the equipment that we use. So it's the new spring for the e-learning element. There's Adobe Connect, Zoom, and for the other elements. But the other thing I haven't mentioned yet is we provide all our materials digitally now through one of our partners, a digital training partner, Mimeo. That's reduced our costs tremendously. We didn't realize how much we were spending on printing. Yeah. And what we were doing to the environment as well. So we can actually provide a license for every bit of course materials for our learners for £12.50 a learner, which is quite amazing, really, you know, and they've got those materials for as long as they keep the account open. It doesn't cost them anything. So therefore, it's seamless. If we've got a course, we've got our virtual training set up already. We've got all the activities set up for virtual. We've got all the activities set up for e-learning element, and we just press a button and the materials are sent out automatically. You know, so that's what we can do. I don't know if you want to add to that, Sarah, but
I don't really know what you've left me to say. And I just realized I've gone really dark now because I'm in a room where I have to move for the lights to come on. So sorry if you can't see me. No, I think, to be honest, Tom's really said most of it there. You know, I think since, well, I started working for the company in 2010. And the transformation that we've been through since then, you know, we're not recognizable to what we were, you know, maybe 13 years ago. We were sort of thinking, we had a bit of an identity crisis for a while. You know, are we a training provider? Are we a consultancy? You know, are we a consultancy that does a bit of training? And, you know, I think with the way things have gone, especially with the pandemic changing how, you know, people want to work, and, you know, the things that we've done have been, you know, as a result of what people want. You know, like the 5-day courses, they're just not doable for people anymore. You know, and the way that we can offer them now to give people a chance to do things in their own time and then join us on for 2 days and, you know, consolidate everything that they've learned. I just think it works so well from a learning perspective and from lifestyle perspective as well.
Yeah, perfect. I've just noticed Tice is online as well with us today from a new spring. Tice, I just wonder if I could perhaps bring you in at this point. From your experiences, you know, internationally as well, have you seen any other user cases, you know, when they've been, let's say, looking at a very long course, say like 5 days or anything like that, and then using a blended technique and technologies to perhaps make that more, should we say, for the learner, obviously reducing the time to be, say, competent or something like that. I just wonder if you've got any examples around that maybe of value to share today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us, and thanks, Tom, for everything you shared so far. It's been great listening in to you. Actually, yes, we do have lots of examples, and what Tom just shared with us, it's almost like how we teach our new colleagues. This is the journey we would love to take our clients on. And then sometimes we succeed in that like super well, and sometimes not that well, right? But I really like what Tom told us there. So I think the pandemic was a pandemic because it was worldwide, right? And we saw lots of customers also in South Africa and Australia, where 2 of our 3 partners are, obviously you being the 3rd one there in the UK. You know, forcing classroom training to like transition into online, and then doing the same thing online as you used to be doing in the classroom, and then going on to realize, okay, so this is not working like really optimal. Let's make some tweaks and tunes and really leverage what's good about online, and then put back offline or instructor-led what has its best use case there. And I really appreciate, Tom, you taking us on this journey, because it's not easy, right? And that's basically the story you're telling. This has been a journey of years from first interest all the way to being successful. And I think it's good to realize that for everybody, that moving from classroom to online, it's not easy. It takes money, it takes effort, it takes a good system, it takes maybe a couple of years even. But once you've gone through all that, you will have now future-proofed your training business. There's a reason why your event is called that. And that's really a journey. I think too many people are looking for a one-off. Oh, I'm looking for this nice tool just to use in my. Can you show me how to create an e-learning real quick? No, I cannot. This is a long process, and it's definitely worth it. But everybody should realize that it's a process, and that's why again, saying it for the 3rd time, I'll stop doing it now. But that's why I love Tom's story so much so far.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And it's super relatable.
Yeah, so and just playing both what you were saying there, Tice and Tom, you know, if you know, we always get this, you know, it takes a long time to create. It takes a very short time to create a really bad course. Mm-hmm. But it actually takes a little bit longer to create a really great course that's engaging, socially connected learners. You talked about obviously uploading assignments or something like that. With your experience, obviously using platforms now to design a course, and you know, how long is a piece of string? But obviously with the complexities, obviously that you're running these accredited certified programs that then obviously then had to be vetted by perhaps an awarding organization. But in your experience of using tools like a New Spring, typically what do you think you're looking at now from creating a course today to perhaps how you used to do it beforehand? Have you got any sort of comparisons?
Yeah, I think when I first started developing training materials, it was sort of, just it was just actually giving lots of information out rather than a learning journey. That's what it is. You actually defined a learning journey. But one of the things, there's a difference between training partners and maybe certified training partners. Certified training partners, the first thing you look at is the learning objectives and the learning outcomes. And you create a learning journey around that by addressing what the learning requirements are for this course. What does the student or learner go away with? Yeah. What are the outcomes? How can you assess that outcome? Now, the one thing I would say, I didn't actually say it earlier, is that the systems and the methodologies that we use with a New Spring, we see that as a partnership, because a New Spring are developing all the time. And, it sounds like from what I've said that it's, it's like a walk in the park. We can use a New Spring, but we come across a lot of issues that we can't resolve ourselves. I want to do something, but I haven't got a clue how to do it. So I get onto a New Spring, and within 24 hours, I've got a response. And the response 99% of the time is exactly what I want. And it teaches me. So we're evolving and we're adapting to use a New Spring as it evolves.
I think I think we're using so much more of the functionality of a New Spring than when we first started, because we've, learned how we can better use it. I think when we first started using it, it was quite simple, bit of content, question after, bit of content, question after. But we've managed to use it now in a much more, I don't know what word to use, it's much more collaborative with the students now, where they've got a lot more information and they can give us a lot more back, and we can give them feedback. And rather than just a information transfer, it is more of a collaborative, way of doing things now.
And also we can sell online, which is quite amazing, really. We get all excited when we get a notification that there's an invoice be paid, and because that's why we're in business, is to make money. And also, we think the learning journeys are important. It isn't about training materials, it's about the learning outcomes. And that's the real important thing. And Sarah will tell you the feedback we get from everybody who goes on our learning courses in terms of e-learning. They think that the systems are a lot better than we think, because we are used to it now, and it's just a natural thing. What type of assignment do we want? Do we want a hand-in assignment? Do we want a video assignment? Do we want this? Do we want that? Do we want the other? We got so many options. We never had these options before. It was always like Dee said earlier, sending a fax. Everything is digital now. Everything's online. So I can go online to a New Spring now, and we've got a group going on a blended learning journey. I can tell you the status of every single person on that, and I can look up all of their activities, and I can give an overview, and I can do whatever I want to. And it's brilliant for actually maintaining all the records of the training you're doing in that format. And we've had a similar thing with Mimeo. They help us to become more digital in terms of the way we distribute our materials. and we know how to do that now. So it seems simple when you get there, but the journey is quite long, and it's quite it's quite torrid on times until we can crack it. But when you crack each individual element and you get all those elements together working tidy, Sarah will tell you it's great. You know, we just say, send out the materials, do this, do that, and it's all done. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tom, I'm obviously I'm listening to where you are, and obviously the journey that you take your customers on, the learners on as well. What would you say? And I'd be interested to hear everybody on the session here today as well. What do you see perhaps is the biggest challenge? You know, 2023. I think most organisations is, do you know what? It's been difficult at times. Things seem to be picking up towards the end of this year. But what would you say as an established organisation that are worldwide? What do you say? Would you say is going to be one of the bigger influences going forward for training providers?
I think the biggest challenge that we face going forward is that technology is changing all the time. You mentioned mobile phone. Somebody mentioned mobile phone earlier. Tablets and what have you. All of our training can be accessed through that. There's an app for a new spring and what have you. So somebody could be on a train doing their doing an activity, you know, and it's something that wouldn't have happened before. And when we set up, Tees will tell you, once we set up our courses, we can actually view them all in different modes. Yeah, we can say, what does this look like on a tablet? What does this look like on a mobile? You know, and these are the challenges that we face going forward. Is that the biggest thing that I was struggling with is giving out materials digitally. Because of my age, I thought that people would want to have hard copies in their hands. They don't want them. Nobody wants them. We give the option, don't we, sir? Nobody wants them. Nobody wants that at all. So we've actually moved from the facts, as we discussed earlier. Another one I was going to mention, Paul, was the slide rule. And lots of older people would know what a slide rule is. But we've moved from that now. And as a business, one of our biggest strengths is we're agile.
Yeah.
And you've got to have that agility to know what's out there. And I always say that we've stumbled across most of the new technology that we've seen, and I think we're quite lucky like that, sir.
I think we have been,
yeah. And it wasn't part of a plan to go digital. It wasn't part of a plan to go e-learning. It's just something that evolved.
Yeah,
it was an evolution rather than a thing we're going to do that next week. You know, we didn't set out a plan like that. We just sort of got, I don't know, drawn into certain things.
Yeah. Well, what happens? Sorry, Sarah, I was going to say, you know, something has to change to create an opportunity, and I think the onset of technologies. You know, we saw that e-learning was coming through. You don't need any tutors anymore. We get that hype and then we drop off, and some of those great things then are adopted for training providers to make more effective, more efficient ways of delivering training that is actually memorable as well. And one thing, listening to both you sort of talking about your experiences, and obviously with the people that are on the session today, is what one thing would you say to someone who's hesitant about taking that next step? What would you say to them other than say, get on your bike and get doing it now? But what would you say to them? Because it's about doing it properly rather than just rushing into it. I'd just be interested on your viewpoints there, both Sarah and Tom.
Yeah. Well, go on, Sarah.
No, I was going to say, I think, the pace of change now is inevitable, and I think, yes, it's about doing things right and doing the right things. But, I think if you don't adopt these changes and go down, the digital route or the blended route or whatever, I think you're going to get left behind. And, that's not to say, like you said, Paul, don't rush into things just to do something. But I think, the pace of change now is just, the traditional way, and I think back to how we used to deliver training, prior to
Right.
the pandemic and everything, you know, printing out reams and reams of paper and, you know, sending them halfway across the world. And it just doesn't, it seems like a different world now. It seems like a different lifetime. And I think, you know, the speed of change now is just unbelievable. And I think for people wanting to adopt this, I think it's a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We had to buy 2 massive cases to go out to Saudi Arabia to take materials, and we had to pay extra for the weight. We did a course. We did 2 courses in Saudi last week and the week before, and that's all the tutor needed to take was the change of clothes, you know, which is unbelievable, you know, and it's a big change. And you know, as Sarah was talking, but there, I can remember doing training with acetates.
Yes.
Yeah. And you know, you drop them on the floor and they get mixed up, you know, and it's not fun, you know, and it's really embarrassing. But I think the one thing is, like, we've got many e-learning courses now, and we're going to develop more blended learning. But I think, as T said, when it's not an easy thing to do. When you get one course done as an e-course, you've got to evaluate it and you've got to make sure that it does the right thing. But as you go along, you get a style. And the one thing that I like about using an e-learning platform is that you can break everything down into small sessions. And those sessions, then you can evaluate. And if that journey is like, you know, it takes them from one point to the end point, and you've met all those learning objectives, it's a success. But it's not easy to do. Mm-hmm. That's the thing I would say. I don't know if you feel the same, Sarah, when we started doing the courses.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we didn't know what we were doing, really. And I think if you compared probably one of our first e-courses to the type of e-courses that we're offering now, you know, they're so much more successful because we've learned, you know, what really needs to be in there and how the content needs to be presented. And, you know, and the good thing about it is that you can make so many amendments to it, you know, and it's easy to do as well. You know, not easy to, you know, come up with how you're going to do everything, but easy to make amendments and, you know, work through it and make improvements. And yeah.
I recognize that, actually. I mentioned earlier that the word data is an important part, and I'll give you some data here. Tom, you talked about in the beginning. I think you said that we wrestled with it for 2 months, and actually that's very similar to what all other customers are doing as well. Generally, we see that by transforming your first course from, let's say, instructor-led to a blended environment, it takes our average customer I'd say 10 to 12 weeks, and they spend about 2 to 3 hours a week doing that, going through the process. So that actually kind of matches what you mentioned earlier. But I also think we've had customers that did it in 2 weeks, the whole thing, and also that did it in 6 months. So this is an average. However, the ones that do it in 2 weeks as one big project quite often are not as successful with it, because then you do need a bit of time to reflect on it, saying, actually, I did this, but you know what? It's actually not working that well. I'd like to change it a bit, learn the feedback you talked about. And of that 10 weeks I mentioned earlier, we found that quite a few customers actually spent 4 to 5 weeks actually planning it. So do nothing in the platform, or not building anything, just plan the whole thing and then build it. And actually that's an important part of it as well. So much for data.
Yeah, but also, apologies, Tom. But also, what I was going to say, also when you're in that process, allocate some time for testing. Some people that you really know that can give you honest feedback as well. We find sometimes that gap sometimes gets missed, because then you launch it and then you get the feedback. But I know we always say that you know, people talk, I don't want to launch it yet, it's not perfect. Well, the fact is that, you know, it evolves, as Sarah was talking about. They evolve. So get something to market, but make sure it's tested and measured first as well when you're looking at the impact measures. Sorry,
Yeah,
Tom.
when we started with using this approach, we created videos, video presentations, and I was the narrator, which is, I wasn't too keen on that. So you'd be sitting in a room and you'd have a little sign on the door, "Do not enter." Right? And every now and then you'd be doing something and you'd get to a certain slide and you'd be talking through it. We'd write all the scripts and everything, and it would all be there. And then somebody'd open the bloody door. So you'd have to redo all of that again. Now, what we're doing now is going on to AI, and we're using AI to narrate those scripts. And we can do it in a much better way than I could do it anyway, So that's something that's come again, using AI to narrate. What do they like, Sarah, compared to me?
Well, we lose the lovely Welsh accent, but for a lot of people, that's probably a positive because they can understand everything that's being said then.
and that's the thing, And we had an issue with Saudi Arabia, where they didn't have the bandwidth to run the videos. So we've had to put another version in for them without videos, So it's fairly easy. Once you've got it started and once you've defined the learning journey, you can do so much with it. Yeah.
Well, Tom, if I must just say, I've actually loved you telling your story today. I've sort of felt that I've got a better insight to you and obviously to Sarah. I'm just looking at the time, and perhaps if I could perhaps give you the time to perhaps think about perhaps one thing that people could take away with them, and perhaps they could perhaps adopt, or something for them to research that would be really good. We're obviously going to provide some links as a follow-up to this today, to some case studies, some resources. A New Spring have got a great, I call it the MasterChef cookbook about blended learning. It's got different titles, just how we interpret it, but it's so powerful. Perhaps Sarah, first of all, what one thing would you say to people today on this session that would help them in their journey, or a resource that you would say have a look at? Got any ideas, Sarah?
I don't know. Put me on the spot now. I love it when people do that. No, I don't know really. I think I don't know. Like I said earlier, like the pace of change and stuff is just, it's unbelievable now. And I think, if it's what your customers want, going down this more flexible route, I think it's the way to go.
Yes.
I think the traditional, ways are just, they are a thing of the past now. And that would be my thing. How can you make it work for the type of training that you're doing?
Yeah, that's good to reflect on that. And Tom?
I would say is that there's an awful lot of resources out there now, and you need to understand what the capability is and use the capability of the resources around you to the utmost. And then you can really make change within your business. Yeah.
That sounds such sound advice. What I would like to say to everybody that's been on the session, if you've enjoyed it, put something on LinkedIn or something like that. I'll do a post later. But I must say, Tom, I've really enjoyed it. And obviously one of my old roles, I used to look after all of Wales, so I was always in trouble for pronunciation, as me and Sarah know about Ystrad Munich, because obviously that's where your husband was from. So with the video about localization is probably another way that we can look forwards and have more flexibility in delivery. I'm going to say to everybody, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. Hopefully you've learned something, or it's given you an idea perhaps to look at things slightly differently. We're always going to be around. We're always going to be here to help you. That's one of my roles, to basically test your processes, to validate it fit for purpose going forward. So thank you so much. And hopefully you can join us for our December session. And at that point, have a lovely remainder of the week and have a great weekend coming. Thank you so much.
Thanks a million.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you now.
Thank you all. Bye.